I never thought I'd be sitting in a courtroom, staring down at my sister, Lily, across the aisle. Her face was a mask of cold determination as the judge pored over the lawsuit she'd filed against me, claiming $3,000 a month in emotional damages for the so-called suffering I'd allegedly inflicted on her since childhood. When Judge Thompson finally looked up from the papers, the courtroom fell silent. "In my 18 years on the bench," he said, "I've never seen such a blatant attempt to turn family strife into a cash grab." That moment was the peak of a nightmare that had been brewing for years. Let me take you back to the beginning. I grew up in a small town in Texas. My parents, Mark and Lisa, seemed like the perfect couple on the outside. Dad was a well-respected banker, and Mom was an elementary school principal. To our neighbors, we were the ideal middle-class family. But behind closed doors, things were far from perfect, especially between Lily and me. Lily was 4 years older than me. By the time I was starting to form memories, she was already the star of the family. At 7, she was winning math competitions and playing the piano beautifully, while I was still learning to tie my shoelaces. Mom would often brag to her friends about Lily's natural talent, saying, "Some kids are just born with it." I remember one parent-teacher conference when I was 8. My teacher had praised my kindness and how I'd helped a classmate who was struggling. On the way home, I waited for my parents to say something, but they spent the whole drive talking about Lily's upcoming state-level piano competition. When I finally mentioned what my teacher had said, Dad just glanced at me in the rear view mirror and said, "That's nice, Dana. Maybe one day you'll be as good as your sister." This favoritism showed up in so many ways. For Lily's 15th birthday, she got a brand new bike. When my 15th birthday rolled around, I got a second-hand book on art. Family vacations were always planned around Lily's interests. If she wanted to go to New York City to visit art galleries for her college portfolio, that's where we went. My suggestion to go camping in the nearby national park was dismissed as being too ordinary. When I was 14, things between Lily and me took a turn for the worse. She had just been accepted into a prestigious prep school with a partial scholarship. I made the mistake of telling her about my crush on a boy named Jake in my science class. The next day, I heard a group of girls in the hallway laughing about desperate Dana, who supposedly wrote Jake a cheesy love letter. When I confronted Lily, she just shrugged and said, "Maybe if you weren't so obvious, people wouldn't talk." Around the same time, Lily borrowed my favorite necklace, a gift from our grandmother, Clara. She returned it with a broken clasp. When I complained to our parents, Mom said, "Dana, it's just a necklace. Lily has more important things to worry about, like her schoolwork." As I got older, I started to develop a lot of self-esteem issues. While Lily shined in the spotlight, I faded into the background. I stopped sharing my achievements with my family because I knew they'd always compare me to Lily and find me lacking. The only person who ever saw me for who I was Grandma Clara. She was a retired art curator, living in a cozy cottage on the outskirts of town. While my parents were at every one of Lily's events, I often spent my weekends with Grandma. She'd say, "Dana, you have a unique way of seeing the world. That's a precious gift." When I brought home an A+ on an art project, my parents barely looked at it, but Grandma hung it on her living room wall and asked me to explain every detail. When I was 16, Grandma had a mild stroke. Lily visited her briefly, then left to study for an exam. I stayed with Grandma until visiting hours were over, reading to her from her favorite art books. As she recovered, I could tell she saw our family dynamics in a new light. She once told me, "True worth isn't measured by awards or recognition, Dana. Some people take a long time to learn that." Fast forward a few years. I was 22, working as a graphic designer at a small firm. The pay was okay, and I loved the creative work. I lived in a tiny apartment, decorated with my own art. Lily, on the other hand, was 26, had graduated from an Ivy League school, and was working at a high-profile law firm. She married a wealthy businessman, Ethan, and they bought a mansion in the upscale part of town. The favoritism continued into adulthood. When Lily and Ethan were buying their house, my parents gave them $60,000 for the down payment. When I asked for a $6,000 loan to take a design course, Dad said, "Dana, we can't just throw money at your hobbies. Maybe you should focus on a more stable career." Over the years, Grandma's health started to decline. She had a more serious stroke when she was 80, which left her with limited mobility. I took on the responsibility of taking care of her. After work, I'd go to her house to help with dinner, do her laundry, and keep her company. On weekends, I'd do the grocery shopping and clean the house. It was tough on my budget, but I never minded because I loved Grandma. Lily's visits to Grandma were rare and short. She'd show up in her luxury car, bring an expensive gift, talk about her work for a few minutes, and then leave, saying she had an important meeting. My parents still praised Lily for being so generous to Grandma, while I was the one doing all the day-to-day care. During this time, I met Ben, a software engineer, at an art exhibition. He was kind and understanding. Unlike my previous boyfriends, he supported me in taking care of Grandma. He'd often come with me to her house and help with small repairs. One day, after a particularly tense family dinner where my parents were fawning over Lily's latest promotion, Ben said, "Your family dynamic is toxic, Dana. You don't have to put up with this." Before Ben, I'd never thought about setting boundaries with my family, but his words made me see things differently. The turning point came at Grandma's 83rd birthday party. I spent weeks planning a small gathering at her house, making all her favorite foods, and creating a photo album of her life. Lily showed up an hour late, interrupting Grandma's speech to present an expensive diamond-encrusted frame. When it was time for Grandma to speak, she held my hand and said, "I want to thank everyone for coming, but most of all, I want to thank Dana. She gives me the most precious gift of all, her time and love." The room fell silent. Lily's face turned red, and my parents shifted uncomfortably in their seats. 3 months after the party, Grandma passed away peacefully in her sleep. I was with her the night before, holding her hand as she told me stories from her youth. The next morning, when I got the call, I rushed to her house. Lily arrived later, dressed in her business suit, saying she had to reschedule a client meeting. A week after the funeral, we went to Grandma's lawyer's office to hear the reading of the will. The lawyer, Mr. Harris, said, "Grandma made these decisions with a clear mind and careful thought." When he read that Grandma was leaving her house and most of her savings to me, Lily exploded. "This is a mistake. She was manipulated," she shouted. Mr. Harris then read a letter from Grandma, explaining that she was leaving the bulk of her assets to me because of my consistent care and love, while Lily had always had more advantages in life. Lily refused to accept Grandma's decision. She launched a smear campaign against me among our extended family. She also filed a lawsuit, claiming that I had emotionally abused her and that I had manipulated Grandma into changing the will. The lawsuit was filled with false accusations and twisted memories from our childhood. As the legal battle progressed, Lily's legal team, led by her husband Ethan, requested all sorts of personal documents from me, like my childhood diaries and emails with Grandma. They also presented evidence of my alleged abuse, which was mostly selectively edited entries from Lily's diary and false statements from my parents. The financial and emotional stress of defending myself started to take a toll on me. I was making mistakes at work, and I was losing sleep over the whole situation. But Ben stood by me every step of the way. One evening, as we were sitting on my balcony, he proposed to me with a ring that had been his grandmother's. In the midst of all the chaos, it was a moment of pure happiness. Just as we were starting to feel a bit of joy, someone started posting one-star reviews of my design work on professional platforms, using language similar to Lily's lawsuit claims. It was obvious it was her doing. As we prepared for the trial, I found a hidden journal in Grandma's attic. It contained entries from the last few years of her life, where she wrote about her concerns regarding Lily's greed and lack of care. There was also a memory card with videos showing Lily rummaging through Grandma's things when she thought no one was looking. The pre-trial hearing was a tense affair. Ethan presented Lily's case with confidence, but when our lawyer, M.S. Davis, presented our defense, highlighting the lack of evidence for Lily's claims, I could see a hint of doubt in Judge Thompson's eyes. Still, he decided to let the case go to a full trial. The day of the trial arrived. Lily took the stand and painted a picture of our childhood that was completely unrecognizable. She claimed I had been a manipulative bully since we were kids. But when it was my turn to testify, I calmly described our real family dynamic, the favoritism, and my genuine relationship with Grandma. Our lawyer also called Dr. Ryan, a family therapist Lily had seen briefly years ago. He testified that Lily had been jealous of me because Grandma seemed to favor me. He also said that Lily had never mentioned any psychological abuse from me during their sessions. Another witness, Sarah, Lily's former assistant, testified that Lily had planned to sue me even before Grandma's will was read. She also revealed that Lily and Ethan had hidden a large amount of their assets to make it seem like they needed the inheritance more. After all the testimony, it was clear that Lily's case was baseless. In his closing statement, Judge Thompson said, "The evidence not only fails to support the plaintiff's claims, but also shows a pattern of manipulation and entitlement." He dismissed the lawsuit with prejudice and ordered Lily to pay my legal fees. In the days that followed, Ethan filed for divorce from Lily. My parents reached out to me, expressing regret for their past actions. They agreed to start family therapy to try and repair our relationship. Lily's professional reputation was in tatters, and many of her clients left her. On the other hand, my design business started to thrive because of the positive media attention. A year after the trial, Lily showed up at my studio. She looked different, more humble. She said, "Dana, I've been in therapy, and I've had to face some hard truths about myself. I was jealous of you. You had a real connection with Grandma that I never could have. I'm truly sorry for what I've done." I didn't know if this was the start of a reconciliation or just a one-time apology. But it gave me hope that maybe, one day, we could have a different kind of relationship. Through all this, I learned that even in the face of family betrayal, there can be unexpected growth and freedom.